I'm gonna tell you something no one's ever told you before. You're just not that big a deal. I ended up going through every dollar I ever made. I liquidated my 401k. I sold all the stocks that I had, and I'm now spending $30,000 a month on oxycodone. And I'm taking about 100 pills a day.
Wow.
Good decisions come from experience, and experience comes from bad decisions, and these guys have taken care of me. They took a shot at me when not a lot of people would have.
You literally 20x'd what you were making.
It was fun. I'm now a partner.
What do you think the value of the company right now?
I'd say we're somewhere in the neighborhood of...
Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys.
I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate your willingness to be open and kind of tell us your story, because I know it's super inspiring. And as far as I know, this is the first ever podcast for you about your life, about your story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're excited?
I am. I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
I think the world needs to know your story. I think a lot of people will find it inspiring and encouraging, and will get a lot of golden nuggets from your life.
Not too much pressure. I like it. Thanks a lot.
But it's going to be great.
Yeah, it was a journey, and it still is. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Michael. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Trend Capital, but that's not where I started. I have to take you guys back to New York, where I'm from. I grew up just outside of New York City in Westchester County. I come from immigrant Italian family. Both of my parents are first generation and from the Bronx. And when I was younger, I was given 3 options. They said, you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, or you can work on Wall Street. And I don't
By
like...
who? By your dad?
Yeah, by my mom.
By your mom?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, she rules with an iron fist. No, so they basically gave me 3 real options. We weren't allowed to find ourselves. We weren't allowed to be creatives. But they wanted us to be successful. And my grandparents came over here with nothing. My grandfather worked on the railroads and in construction. My grandmother was a seamstress in a sweatshop. And then they opened up their own convenience store on Arthur Avenue. My dad's father was a postman. My grandmother, both my grandmothers worked. My other grandmother worked in a hospital. And so it was instilled in me at a young age that in order to get ahead in this country, you have to work hard. You have to work harder than the next guy, and anything is possible. And they taught me a lot of good values. So when I was choosing between the 3, I make a joke. My parents really would have supported me in other fields, but those were the 3 that I got pushed on me. I was always enamored by Wall Street, by the stock market, by trading. There wasn't as much content back then. You know, we used to look up the stocks in the newspaper from the night before, see where they closed. You know, we had some classes in high school that would basically get you introduced to what the stock market did and how companies were valued. So when I applied to schools, I applied only to business schools going into college. And it was very important for me to go to college in my family. Things have changed now. There's not as much of a need for the higher education. There's a lot more entrepreneurs that get started younger. That wasn't the case in the 90s, and I graduated high school in 99. So I applied to Villanova University. I went there. I got into the Commerce and Finance School. I graduated with a degree in finance and a minor in communications. And the only reason why I have a minor in communications is because I had a lot of free electives, and the easiest courses were communications, and so I just ended up with a minor in communications. But cool. Finance was my passion, and it's what I wanted to do. I graduated in 2003, and the job market was terrible. So it was different than now. You weren't applying online. There was no Indeed or LinkedIn. So I went door to door, and I handed my resume to different investment banks and sales trading desks. And then eventually, Bear Stearns called me in for an interview. And my uncle, who had worked on Wall Street years before, knew somebody that had worked there. So when I went in for the interview, at the end of the interview, they actually asked, I go, is there anybody that I should know that you know? And I said 2 names that he gave me to drop. And they were like, well, you should have said that in the beginning of the interview. So Bear Stearns back then, they've since closed since 2008 from the Great Recession. But it was one of the big banks. They competed with Goldman Sachs. And so me getting a job at Bear Stearns was like, fulfilled a lot of my mom and my dad's dreams. It was a big deal. Wow. And so I got the job. I was making $35,000 a year, and I was working in Metro Tech, Brooklyn. So to take you what that means, I was going from Westchester to Metro Tech. So I would wake up at 5 in the morning. I would take the train in at 6. I'd get to work by 6:37, and then it was the grunt job of Wall Street. It wasn't on a trading desk. It wasn't anything that I would say is glamorous. My first job was to go down into the print shop and pick up the trade receipts and bring them up. They printed them out on paper, bring them up to the desks. We'd cut them off. I would then, I was rectifying, or what's the word I'm looking for? I was basically looking for trade breaks, which means that I had to take trades that were made the day before and make sure they matched with the actual trades that were made and make sure the money all matched, and we were doing it all by hand.
Wow. So
and
Wall
then
Street was really behind the tech.
It was
So
behind
no
the tech.
Excel sheets.
No Excel. I wasn't allowed to have internet because they didn't want us going on the internet.
Oh my
So they
gosh.
blocked us from the internet. And the only emails I could send were to people that were within Bear Stearns. If I tried to send it to somebody else, it would just fail.
Wow.
It almost sounds like the way AI is today. There's so many financial institutions that are like, you can't use AI, you can't use this,
Yeah,
you
they
can't
block
have it
it.
on your, they block everything.
Yeah, so this was all like pen and paper. And then eventually, you'd have to enter everything into the computer, but it looked like one of those old black screens with yellow writing. I mean, it was
DOS.
Yeah, DOS.
Those, like,
exactly.
terminal machines,
That's great.
yeah.
I asked them very early on, when can I get my Series 7? Because I wanted to trade. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on a trading desk. And they said, at least 2 years. And I said, what if I excel? And they said, doesn't matter. I said, what do you mean it doesn't matter? And they said,
Corporate world, baby.
exactly. And I said, this isn't for me. I didn't like it. And honestly, they had put all the Italian, when I walked into Metro Tech, there were 2 offices for Bear Stearns. There was 3 Madison, and there was Metro Tech in Brooklyn. All the Italians started in Metro Tech. Anybody who knew anybody, all the people with real connections, they went into 383 Madison and into a different training program. So they were accelerated compared to where I was. To get from Metro Tech to there, it was going to take a while.
How big was the company?
It's a good question. I don't know. It was
roughly 400
No, yeah, it's bigger than that.
thousands.
Yeah, thousands.
Okay.
It was a big investment bank.
Okay.
And so I was in this managerial training program where I went from department to department within the back office. There's the front office, which is trading, and the back office, which is operations. So I was in operations. So I went from department to department, which will come later in the story on why that was important. About 9 months into the job, I got offered a job from a startup investment bank who I was doing their trade consolidations. And they said, can you do what you're doing there for us? We have nobody that does this on our side of the business. And I said,
How did you get this offer?
so I worked with them every day. I was consolidating their trades. I was making sure the trades they made were, and the trades that we had in the system matched, and that there weren't any trade breaks. And they had, their traders were basically doing it themselves. And they had one guy that was like helping out with it. So he said, can we hire you to come over and do this? And I said, will you let me get my Series 7? They said, you can take that immediately. And I said, okay.
What is that, Series 7?
Series 7 is what you need to do to trade legally in the market.
Okay.
Yeah, not anybody can just, I mean, now you can trade on Robinhood personally, but if you want to trade for clients and an investment
So
bank.
it's like certifications.
Exactly,
Okay.
63 and the 7. So they told me I could get my licensing immediately.
Wow.
I said, okay, I'll come. And I took a pay cut to do it. I went from 35,000 to 32,000, I think. But I was willing to take that shot. And when I did it, my mom was really upset. She said, you're at this company. You know how hard it is to get into Bear Stearns. It's got the name. You just have to be patient. And I said, I understand. But this startup, they were like 15, 20 guys. It's special. I can tell. I had a feeling. And she's like, you're 22 years old. What feeling do you have?
Yeah.
But I did it. And those relationships become very important in my story. I was able to get my Series 63, my 7. I was able to start bringing in accounts. So Wall Street is split into what they call the buy side and the sell side. The buy side are the hedge funds, the portfolio managers that decide what they're going to trade for the fund, and then people invest in that fund. Other institutions invest in that fund, and the return that they show their investors. They use investment banks and sell-side shops to use research and to use assets in order to trade certain stocks. So they'll take, so for instance, a sell-side shop or Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, they would have analysts, and the analysts would say, you should invest in these stocks and this is why. And so in order to pay for those that research, they would send over trades to the desk, and they would send them through people like me. And then we would trade that order and return the trades electronically to them. So now I'm...
Stock market 101.
Yeah, I wanted to give you a
Wall
little bit of
Street.
a background so you can understand what I'm about to tell you. So I didn't have a niche, and you need one on Wall Street. So I had to find how I could fit as a young guy on Wall Street that was going to have people that were going to send me trades at a small startup investment bank.
And nobody was going to tell you what to do. You had to create it on your own.
You have to create it on your own. Yeah, and everyone's competitive too. They're not going to tell you because they don't want you to get. They want you to do well, but they don't want you to do that well.
They don't want you to do better than them.
Exactly. So I was coming out of my apartment in New York City one day, and I run into this guy from my fraternity in college, and I said, John, so what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm dating some girl that lives in your building. I was like, he goes, where are you going? I said, I'm going to work. He said, do you need a ride? I said, sure. And he drove me to work. And I asked him what he did, because I didn't even know what he did for a living. He's like, I work at a hedge fund. I was like, nah, here we go. So after I got my 7, he was my first phone call. We go out to dinner, and he's like, listen, I don't really have room to send trades to like a small trading desk. Can you get hard to borrow stocks? And hard to borrow stocks are basically, you can either buy a stock if you think it's going to go up, or short sell it if you think it's going to go down. In order to short sell a stock, you have to borrow shares, and there's only so many shares that are outstanding in the market. So you have to go and
find somebody who's willing to give up their shares for a temporary amount of time for the short order.
Exactly. So I said, I think I can do that. He said, you sure? I said, well, call me if you need hard to borrow stock. So the first stock he asked me to short was Martha Stewart when she was coming out of prison, because the stock started going really, really high. People were shorting it, and it was still going higher. And so I called Bear Stearns, where I used to work in that managerial training program, because it was all Italians. I did one of my rotations was on the stock loan desk. I said, do you guys have Martha Stewart? And they said, for you? Absolutely. And they sent it to me. And the interesting part is the way stock loan works, at least back then, was like you could be a small hedge fund and you go and try to get a borrow from the investment bank, like say 100,000 shares. And they might tell you no, but a big hedge fund calls 2 minutes later and they ask for 1 million shares and they'll say yes, because it's all relationship based. So I figured out it was relationship based, and I started building relationships on stock loan desks to cover these mid-size hedge funds. And fast forward to 2007, 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, the world was coming to an end. Everybody needed stock loan and stocks to borrow. And I was the guy that they could go to if you were a smaller hedge fund. So they started sending their trades through me. We started shorting a lot of stocks. I got my 55, which is another license, and that allowed me to trade the stocks myself instead of giving it to someone to trade. So I was not only bringing in the trades, but I was also physically trading them online. And we made a lot of money, and it was great. And this whole time, ever since I was younger, I had always been a party guy. I had always participated in fun. I liked to go out. I was a club kid in the 90s.
This startup that you joined, does it still exist?
Yeah, Matchbox is. Yeah,
it still does.
Yep, and they're in different cities, and they're bigger than they've been than when I was there. Yeah.
Okay, and so what role in terms of level in the company were you taking?
So I would say that so it's different than it is in a lot of companies. So Wall Street goes vice president, director, managing director, and that's the line. Whereas in in the industry I'm in now, in technology, it goes director, VP, senior VP. So it's reversed. I didn't really have a title when I was in my late 20s. I remember my CEO said, "Do you want me to give you the title of VP?" And I said, "I don't really care about titles right now. Like we were just making money."
Was it still about 15 people?
No, it had grown. So I'm sorry. So when I started, we were 15. By the time we were done, we had a research department. They were starting to try to bring in investment deals like IPOs and secondaries. And we must have been closer to that 70, 75, mark.
And how much money was the company making?
It's a good question. It was definitely 9 figures. I'm just not sure how high. Let's call
What
it.
about you? What your side?
Oh, so me? Oh, I can tell you how much I made. So I was bringing in about 2 to 2.5 million a year, and so I was making about 750,000 to 800,000. But I'm in my
wow.
late 20s, so I was 28 when I had when I bought my apartment in Manhattan. So that was like the first big year, and that was 2009.
And so you started on Wall Street at 22, making 33,000 a year, and now you're making $750,000.
Yep.
What was it like when you got your first big check, and like
So
how
that's
did
in
that start
5 years.
changing you?
That's in 5 years.
Yeah,
2003, you
6.
finished school.
Yeah.
In 5 years, you were making close to $1 million.
You literally 20x'd what you were making.
It was fun.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I didn't go from like 32 to 800. I went 32. I remember the first time I made 100,000. I thought that was the biggest deal in the world, and it was like 150. And then the next year I made 3, and then the next year was 750.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of success.
But as I was going, I was having fun. I was a single guy in New York City.
It's a party city.
It's a party city. I learned very quickly that you can pay for play, and what that means is like guys wanted research, but they also were willing if you would take them out to a nice dinner, if you would take them to a ball game, take them to a concert, and you would, it was that era. They would then send you trades the next day. So I was like, I'll just go out every night and take clients out because I can. And New York City is my backyard. So there's, there's at least 8 sport teams. There's every concert that does a tour goes through New York City. There's endless nightclubs and restaurants. And so, I ended up, and I also had an expense account so I could go out and, take these guys out and not have to pay for
Don't
it
even
myself.
spend your money.
Right, it was
Spend
great.
company money to have fun. Why not?
Yeah. It was before the days of Uber. I remember we had a black town car account. So when you needed a ride home for a client, you would just call the black town car. They would show up and then they'd go home. And it was fun. It was. But, I was always on walking the line of what was acceptable and what wasn't. And what I mean by that is I'm talking about drugs and alcohol. I drank a lot, and I drank a lot in college, but I didn't do too many drugs in college, but I had experimented with ecstasy and, party drugs. But when I got to Wall Street, my first party, I had never done coke before in my life. A guy was like, "Oh, can you watch the bathroom door?" And I was totally oblivious. I was like, "Sure." So I was watching the bathroom door. He breaks out of line. And he's like, "Do you want one?" And I just didn't even hesitate, and I just did it. And part of it was, I never really knew what they meant by peer pressure when they're teaching you in school, but that was like a minute, like I could have been like, "Nah, I don't," but I wanted to be one of the guys, so I did. And I think I would have done it eventually anyway. I don't think that person or how it happened is to blame for anything. That's more of a personal journey for me. But I liked it, and I got to drink more when I did it. And so the drinking, the partying, it increased as my career got better and better. So 3 years after, so it was 2012 was I had gotten married, and I had made the decision that I wanted to now leave the company that I'm at, and I wanted to go off on my own and try to build something.
And what year was this? Just
2012.
2012. So you went through the Great Recession, and you guys made a lot of money.
Yep.
And now you're ready
years.
to just
Because
start
he
your
was
own thing.
shorting.
Yeah. So there was this there's this company that had a small company. They had about 4 partners, and they had like 4 or 5 employees, and they were on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And I knew one of the partners very well, and he was buying out his other 2 partners because they didn't get along. And he said, "We want you to come in and join us, and you can buy in and buy part of the broker dealer."
And basically take their spot.
That's right. And at this point, I had a younger guy that was working with me, and he and I were also fraternity brothers in college. And he was a superstar, and I knew that. And so he was at a hedge fund, and when that hedge fund folded, he came over and started working with us. So he wanted to leave as well, and I said, "Listen, let's do this together. And like, should we go to a bigger place? Should we go to or should we do something smaller and build it from the ground up?" And we decided to do something smaller. We went and joined what's called Livermore was the name of the company. Honestly, I'm very proud of the decision that we made. It took a lot of risk to do. I left a comfortable position. I had been there for 8 years.
Wow.
I was the CEO, and a lot of the senior guys at that company were like brothers to me. They were like older brothers. I was one of the youngest guys in the company. But I wanted to have an opportunity to try to do something on my own.
You wanted your shot.
I did. And a lot of the accounts that were really big on Wall Street were covered. Like other guys, they were already their accounts. So there wasn't a lot of blue sky for us to navigate. So I wanted to have more of a blank slate. And it was also a time when I got introduced to oxycodone. So I remember I had gotten like my first hangover ever. I was 31 years old, and I'm on a golf course, and someone says, "Oh, you have a hangover?" I was like, "Yeah, I must be getting old. I never had this before." And they said, "Why don't you try this?" And I took it, and I swear to God, it was love at first sight. And I was like, "This is awesome. Where do you get these?" And he's like, "Oh, right across the street from your office, there's a guy that sells them." And at first I was taking Oxy to, to remove the hangovers,
sober.
to feel better. And then I was saying, "Oh, I'll take it after work sometimes just to unwind." And then I started taking them instead of drinking. And then I started taking them in the morning just to feel better. And my drug addiction was skyrocketing. And I wasn't a good partner to those guys. I was a good producer. I could still ring the register. I brought in some big trades and some good money for them. But I was chaotic. I was showing up just on time. I was leaving as soon as the bell rang. I just wasn't a good partner, and it's something I've had to reconcile with as someone that is now a partner at another company. What a really good partner should be, and so we're still making a lot of money. We're still doing well financially. My marriage is terrible. We didn't get along. It was a transactional marriage, if I'm being honest. We should have never gone on a second date, let alone walk down the aisle together. And I'm now spending $30,000 a month on oxycodone. And I'm taking about 100 pills a day.
Wow.
Yeah. It escalated quickly. It was fast.
That sounds like a lot. Is this a normal dose for a
Normal
addict?
dose is 1 pill when you have, or 2 if you have like surgery. For me, I was taking 20 to 25 at a time.
And so for context,
Wow.
for the average person to understand, like if you go and get a surgery, get sent home with the bottle of Oxy or Vicodin or whatever.
Yep.
How much did they put in the bottle, and what's the dosage? And let's compare that to what you were.
Sure.
One bottle is 30 pills, right?
30 pills, 10 milligrams a pill. And I was taking basically 2/3 of that bottle all at once.
And how widespread was this on Wall Street? Because I think a lot of people, their context of Wall Street today is, watching The Wolf of Wall Street and,
So I want to be
drugs
clear
everywhere.
before I answer this, that not everybody on Wall Street does drugs. I happen to find the people on Wall Street that did, because I believe that birds of a feather flock together. You find your people, whether you're doing good things or you're doing bad things. I was doing bad things. So it was,
But there is a stereotype.
Yes.
Wall Street, money, drugs, partying.
Yeah.
And probably because of the Wolf of Wall Street movie.
Yeah, no.
Potentially.
Listen, Hollywood has done us no favors. That's
Yeah.
for sure. But there are a lot of smart people that don't touch drugs, and definitely look down on people that do. I found the ones that partied, and they were very successful as well. And not all of them had addictions. They partied, but they didn't necessarily party like I did. So I'll give you an example. So remember how I was saying I was taking guys out one at a time? One night at a time. So every guy that would go out would want to go out with someone like me, and that would be their one night of the month that they'd want to go out and party
just
like a
let
rock star.
loose.
Go hard.
Right. But I was doing that
Every
with
day.
every account at least once a month. You add that up, you have a few accounts, and now you're out every night.
How does your body even able to?
That was a blessing and a curse. So I never got hungover, and I thought I was like lucky, but really what it did was
Superhuman.
but I never felt my mistakes from the night before. I was always the first one in the office. I was always able to grind until I found the pills, and the pills, they grabbed a hold of me and they just didn't let go. And I just would dream of them, think of them. It was just all encompassing. So as my marriage is falling apart, I'm doing a ton of pills. I'm acting erratic at work. I lose an account. No big deal. I lose another account. But now I'm not adding accounts when you lose accounts. People lose accounts all the time, but usually you're adding while you're subtracting, and you're adding more than you're subtracting. I was just subtracting.
And the way you're saying it, it almost seems like you weren't the guy who lost accounts. You were always the one who was breaking stuff.
Yeah, I didn't really lose
So
accounts.
you're not on your A game anymore. So
No.
you're starting to decline.
I called it chinks in my armor. My armor was starting to show that there was something wrong. So, my partners tried to talk to me. They tried to I felt like I wasn't honest with anybody. I wasn't honest with myself, so I couldn't be honest with them. I certainly couldn't be honest with others.
Did they understand that you were dealing with the problem you were dealing with?
They knew.
They slowly tried to bring it up,
But they knew.
They had to have known. Yeah, they're not stupid.
I mean,
one of my ex-partners, he's the man. He's a great dude. He's an ex-cop. That was his first career. He had to have known. And after a while, you couldn't not know, and they tried to help me. So they sent me to what's called a detox center, and I went in there. And you go in there for 7 days, and you come off all the drugs, and then when you go out, you're supposed to go to rehab. But I refused. I did the 7 days and bought drugs the first day I got out. So I didn't even take the help that they were giving me. And eventually, my wife left me, to speed up the story a little bit. And I had a $30,000 a month oxy habit. My partners and I weren't getting along, I told people. They just were done with me. And so I left and took pennies on the dollar when I left. And then I had no money coming in, this habit. I was spending money foolishly besides that. I ended up going through every dollar I ever made. I liquidated my 401k. I sold all stocks that I had. And I lost everything basically. And the bottom was my 35th birthday. This is how crazy I was at the time. I had my own apartment, but I got a hotel room. I got a bottle of scotch, a ton of blow, and a ton of pills. And when everything was gone, I had canceled the birthday party that my sister was throwing for me, which we were supposed to have a dinner with my friends. And then hours before I decided I'm not gonna go. It's the middle of the night. I called my parents. I get my dad on the phone. I said, Dad, listen, now he's been with my mom since they're 18 years old. So I said, I don't think I can do this anymore. I said, I just want to know if I'm not around anymore, would you and Mom still make it? Would your marriage make it? And he says, what are you talking about? I said, I can't do this. I don't know how to live. So I just want to end this.
You wanted to commit suicide?
I think it was a cry for help. I think if I wanted to commit suicide, I would have done it. To me, this was I don't know how serious I was, but this is what I was asking him. Can I commit suicide? I was asking for his permission. And he said, no, you just have to come home. Come with us, live with us. And so I went home for 2 weeks, pretended like it never happened, that conversation, and then went back to doing what I was doing anyway. But that was the real bottom. I remember I knew I couldn't figure it out, and I was out of money. And it was terrible. And then I spent the majority of my time trying to find pills. You have to find all day, to go scratch and find pills. I sold my Rolex. I sold my Cartier Roadster. Those were 2 watches I got as bonuses when I was on Wall Street. I was selling anything that wasn't nailed down. I sold my gold necklace and my old wedding ring. And I remember I make a joke. My cars were getting worse. I was downsizing so much, and my drug dealer's car was getting nicer. So I was stumbling around New York City, and I run into my cousin who was also living in New York City, and she knew that she just saw me and she knew how bad it was. And so she told my other cousin, and they were all talking, my sister. And so one of my cousins calls me. I'm very close with my cousins, they're like my sisters. And she said, Michael, I'm not saying that you're doing drugs, and I'm not saying that you're drinking. Which is a really good way to start because it didn't put me on the defense. She's like, but can you admit you're not happy? I said, I'm miserable. Yeah, I'm not happy. And she said, well, I know the coolest guy in the whole world. Would you talk to him? And I said, if he calls me within the next 30 minutes, because my drug dealer was on the way, I said, yeah, I'll talk to him. And
So you knew you for the next 30 minutes you're gonna be sober.
yeah, I was gonna be sober enough. Yeah.
Okay.
So he calls this guy Marco, and he tells me his story, and it's like my story, almost exactly. And at the end, he turns to me and he goes, "And I haven't drank or used drugs in a year." And my mind was like, I said, "How did you do that?" He said, "I went to this place called Hazelden Betty Ford. It's a rehab. Would you be willing to go?" I said, "Will I come out and not drink?" He said, "That's up to you, but it'll help." I said, "Yeah, if you can get them on the phone in the next 15 minutes." And he did. He was still connected to Hazelden, and I talked to them, and I was going to Naples, Florida. And I was gearing up, ready to go. I told my best friend. He lived in the same building as me. Told my sister, and my sister's like, "I'm going to come get you tomorrow. We're going to tell mom and dad, and we're going to go." I said, okay.
And that decision to go, I mean, do you feel like that only came because you truly were hitting rock bottom in that moment?
Yeah, it's because I ran out of money. That was really important, because as long as I had money in my pocket, I was going to buy drugs. And when I had no more money,
Nothing to sell.
nothing to sell, and it was just me alone with me, I needed something to change. I decided to go to rehab when it was less scary than the direction my life was going in. So my life was so scary at that point. The rehab didn't sound like such a bad idea. They call that the gift of desperation, which I had. So we go up to my parents, and I was telling them I was going to rehab, and they were apprehensive about me going. They didn't want me to have a stigma, because they're old school. It's not their fault. They didn't really understand addiction. They never dealt with it before. So they're like, "You're going to have a stigma. You're not going to be able to work on Wall Street. Everyone, who's going to hire you after this?" And to shock them, unfair to them, I told them that I had tried heroin, which was true. And because I didn't like it, but I was running out of money and it was cheaper than Oxy, so I tried it. And my dad looked at me and he's like, "You know what? You quit the Boy Scouts in the 4th grade. You're going to quit rehab. Do what you want, basically."
Well,
And
not a lot of support.
They end up being very supportive in this journey, and are to this day very supportive. But back then, they were not. It was so that's when I called my insurance company. I said, "Naples, Florida. You have anything further from New York?" And they were
Your
like,
insurance company?
"Yeah." So I was going. I had insurance. I was still.
Okay.
For some reason, I was still paying for Cobra.
Okay,
Can you
gotcha.
believe that?
Huh.
There's like a lot of like.
You found a way to still pay for Cobra.
I did still pay for Cobra because
That's good.
I knew I was going to need insurance because I was so
Because
messed
they're
up.
gonna find you somewhere
That's
in
what
a really bad.
Yeah, that's what I was.
shape.
It was like
But-
self-preservation. I don't know
Wow,
what it is.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
But with
And by the way, I wasn't pretty at that point. I had put on 50 pounds because, Oxy, you don't go to the bathroom for weeks at a time. So I was just eating and eating the worst food ever, cheap food, because pizza, anything I could get with fast food, anything I could get my hands on. So I'd gone from like 175 pounds to like 215 pounds. I don't look anything like I do right now. Well, if, a puffed up version. So I called my insurance company and I said, "What's the furthest Betty Ford Hazelden that you'll cover from New York?" And they said, "We have one in Newburgh, Oregon." And I was like, "Never heard of it. I'll go there." And by the way, I called it Oregon. So,
A lot of people call it Oregon.
yeah, so I never even heard of
Oregon.
it. So I get on a plane on September 11th in 2016, and I fly out here, and I go to rehab, and this guy gives me a packet on shame. My drug counselor gives me a packet on shame, and he says, "Read this." And I read it, and I highlighted it, and it was like so powerful to me. It was like all like the stuff that I was ashamed of. All the things that I had been doing while I was drinking and using drugs were stopping me from getting sober because I was so ashamed of it. I wanted to drink and do drugs to not think about all the things. And it was like this never-ending self-fulfilling prophecy. So I went to give it back to him. He's like, "Well, I guess you can keep that because you highlighted it." I said, "Oh." He said, "But I guess it spoke to you." I said, "Yeah, it did." And he said, "You don't have to carry that anymore. You can start healing." And I said,
and is this like your first session when you arrive, or?
"Yeah."
Okay, so you got to work right away.
I got to work right away.
So-
Well, actually, that's a really good question. The first session, I walked in and I told him all the things that I had ruined in my life, and that I was ruining my parents' marriage, and that I was ruining my sister. It was really worried, and I messed up my cousin's wedding, and all the things I had done wrong. And he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to tell you something no one's ever told you before. You're just not that big a deal. get out of my office. And he kicked me out of the first session.
It's almost like Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah, it was really, I was
So
like,
he was so mad at you that you really think like that.
well, he wanted to prove a point to me because, yeah, exactly. He wanted me to know that I think I can ruin my parents' marriage. I think I have control all over this. I think I'm this big, but you're not that big a deal. You control you. They control them. And it was a really interesting lesson. I needed to be spoken to like that. He was an East Coast guy. He's from DC, and he was no nonsense, all business. So second time I went in was with the Shame Packet, and then I took off. I started doing the reading, the big book. I started listening to other people, and the coolest thing that I learned was like, all these people didn't look like me, didn't sound like me, not an Italian in the bunch, right? They're younger than me, older than me, but all of our feelings were all very similar. So I was like, this is really a thing. We are really, this might be a disease or something that like we are all connected somehow. So I started doing the work. I agreed eventually to go to AA. I started meditating, and 37 days later, I moved out. I moved into a sober house. I lived there for 9 months. I started going to AA every day, and I did that for years.
Till now.
I still go to AA, but not every day. Life kind of gets a little bit bigger. You become a little bit more healthier. I still go to AA every week.
But to help other people, basically.
No, I'm
Support. Just be there. Just remind yourself.
I'll give you this. The reason why I go to AA is one, yes, to be there for other people, and I believe to keep it, I have to give it away, so to speak. But the AA is something like medicine that you don't know when you're going to need. So if you don't go and something happens and you end up in a situation, you don't have the accountability, you don't have the sober friends. So now you need it, you're not there. So you continue to go for the rest of your life. That's basically the gist. That's what I believe is the right thing to do. So I started going to AA. This guy in AA, he's like my dad's age, went the same exact year. He offers me a job selling boats at his marina, yachts, so that I can stay in Portland and not go back to New York.
And were you living out of Portland at the time?
Yeah, so I moved out of the sober house after 9 months, and I moved into my first apartment with 2 guys from the sober house, and we're living there.
And you didn't have a job, so this guy offered you basically your first job out of rehab.
Yeah, well, the very first job was unofficial. I worked demolition. One of the guys in my sober house was like renovating houses, and I don't know anything about, I can barely change a light bulb. But and I had never worked with my hands, and I never wanted to work with my hands again, by the way. But he said, you can make money daily if you just come and just reno this thing. Basically, he's like, can you swing a sledgehammer? At this point, I was going to the gym all the time. I was like, yes. I had rededicated my life to eating well. At this point, I think I had lost like 45 pounds. I was in the gym, and I wanted to make some money, so I did. But through that first year of sobriety, I didn't date. I made sure that I didn't make anything my whole world, because if I made something my whole world and it didn't work out, I was afraid then my world would feel like it was collapsing and I'd go back.
You can ruin it.
Yeah, exactly. So, so I worked demolition, and then a guy in AA offered me a job that was more permanent, and I said, I don't know how to sell boats. I don't know anything about boats. And he said, listen, you can probably sell. I can tell. So I'll teach you about boats, and you just sell to the customers. And I said, Rick, I went to college. I have like licenses. What's the, this, I really don't want to do this. And he said, the smartest people I've ever met in this life are people that I sold boats to. And I said, okay, I trust you. And then I told my parents I was going to sell boats. And this is when my dad became really supportive. He said, Michael, I told you to be all in on this thing before you left, and you're all in. And I said,
and you're not moving back, you're staying here.
I'm staying there. And he understood. He said, I'm sad that this is the best version of you I've ever seen, because I don't get to see you every day like I used to. But I told you to be all in, and you're all in.
It almost seems like that was something that you almost needed to hear throughout your whole life, and you didn't.
Yeah. My dad is, we didn't have a bad relationship. I wouldn't say we had a great relationship growing up. Like, he went through his own personal journey with work. He was an entrepreneur. His business went under when the Asian market crashed in the late 90s. Throughout high school, I had, we were struggling for money in a town where people had a lot of money. And when you're younger, you don't really notice what people don't have, or what people have versus what you have. And then I started noticing what I didn't have. And it was one of the things that actually motivated me to work. I was like, I want to have what I want. I want to be like what my friends have. So I wanted to, I thought I was as good as everybody else, so I was going to make as much money as I could. And my dad, to his credit, he restarted a new career when he was 45, and he did very well. He's retired now. Like, you know, he built his life back up. And when I was going through this, I was 35. And I remember using him as an example in my head, saying if he could do it
At 45.
You could do it at 35.
And it was really big for me to have that.
That anchor point.
Exactly.
Yeah, that example, life example.
Yeah, because you can think in theory, yes, I can do it. But to know that somebody did it and did it at a later and older age, it was really helpful. So
You started selling boats.
I started selling boats, and I hated it. It's not for me. Like it was boring. You sit in a office with no windows, waiting for someone to walk in, and like I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of writing. It was really good because it helped me heal, and it was no pressure. And he gave me a draw. I would pay back the draw. So I was, making about $40,000 a year. Nothing crazy, but I wasn't living very big. I didn't have much as in a way of like a car and stuff like that. So my expenses were low. It was a nice reset. Like I had to reset with all my relationships. I had to reset my relationship with money, reset my relationship with my parents, reset my relationship with women. Like everything was a reset, money included. So fast forward, I get a phone call, and the sales manager from our Seattle office said, listen, this guy called here, but he's in Vancouver, Washington, so he's going to come into the Portland store. I want you to take it. And it wasn't my day, but because he called, I was allowed to take it. And in walks in Vitaly. And I'll never forget, he came in with his family. They went to look at one boat. We ended up selling him another boat, a little bit bigger. And I got to know him over the next few months. And then eventually he came in with Vlad, and Vitaly he had outgrown his boat in 3 months and wanted to buy no longer wanted a 48-foot boat. He wanted a 68-foot boat.
The appetite is going up.
It's going up. It's like watches. So I said, okay, we're going to go down to Florida. There's a show in Florida in the Keys. So Vlad, Vitaly, the families, they all come in. And I really got to know them over that trip. And they were really cool. And they showed up in a Bentley rental car. And I was like, who are these guys? What do they do? I was so interested in them. And not to mention that
it's a rental.
I know, but it was
so special about
because
Bentley?
not many people spend $2,000 on a rental car.
Not 2,000. It's probably $500 a day.
Okay.
For 4 days comes out to 2,000.
Yeah, 2,000. Just about.
He's doing the math in his head. He's a finance guy. Yeah.
So
typically, sorry to interrupt, but
it.
typically people rent the cheapest, dumbest car.
Yeah.
That's typical, right?
Yeah.
Like the
a
cheapest
RAV4.
one. Yeah. Well, that's a nice one. I'm talking about like Nissan Altima.
Yeah.
No AC.
But they had my attention. Vitaly, I made the joke. He would come. He had come to look at the boat so many times, and every time he showed up, it was with a different car. So by the 5th time he came, it was with a car I had already seen, and I said, I'm really disappointed. I already saw this car. But we had a good relationship. We were starting to build like a little bit of a client salesman friendship, work friendship. And so when we got back to Portland, they called me and asked me to go to lunch. So I think I'm selling Vitaly's boat, and this is going to be a big commission. I was very excited. And we went to La Pala, and it's no longer open, but I'll never forget that we went to lunch in the restaurant in town, and they started asking me questions about me. And I said, what's going on here? And I was like, it was clearly an interview. They were interviewing me. And they said, well, what do you think you can do? Could we do something together? Do you think you can trade stocks still? And I was like, I don't want to do Wall Street. And we were kind of going back and forth. And they're like, listen, we have a company. It's hard to hire out here. We're looking for people with business experience. Would you think about joining? I said, I don't have that type of business experience. Like I was, on Wall Street. It's totally different. And Vlad looked at me, he goes, do you want to sell boats or do you want to help build a company? And I said, well, when you ask it like that, I was like, all right, this is what I need to cover my bills. Can you guys at least give me that? And they said yes. So I called my dad on the way home. I said, Dad, this is what's going on. What do you think? He said, in order to be successful, you have to step out of your comfort zone. So what are you scared of? And he said, at this point, you
have nothing to lose.
There's nothing to lose. I was like, it's true. I had nothing to lose. It's the best decision I've made besides probably getting sober and marrying my wife. And so I said yes. And they didn't have a spot for me, really. I went in there, kind of meandered a little bit, and they were like, oh, you can help on this project. And 2 weeks later, the project will be gone. I should tell you what Trend Capital does. So Trend Capital is a technology company that specializes in digital marketing, specifically lead generation. And when I started there, I think they were doing about 45 to 50 million in revenue and about 20 to 25 people. That's about right. And so I had to learn new vernacular, right? Like I had to figure out how to speak the language, learn the products, what we did, and kind of integrate into a team. And the people that they hired were great, like really good hires. Like they were good people. And so I felt very comfortable right off the bat telling them that I was in recovery and I don't drink. And none of them have ever tried to get me to drink. It was a really safe place for me to work. And that's a testament to Vlad and Vitaly. They hired good people.
And what do you think it was about your relationship with Vitaly when you were selling him the boat and you're now his boat guy, that he saw something in you and he wanted to invest in it?
I think I know the moment where it started working in his head. I think Vlad had a lot to do with this as well, by the way. But I think Vitaly saw me checking CNBC when I was on my phone, because I still had the app. Now I'd go through the stocks. And he said, why are you checking the CNBC?
Stocks.
And I said, I told him my story. I left some details I told you guys. Basically that I had a drug problem, that I'm recovering, and that this is a job that I have right now, but this is not what I'm looking to do forever. And he and Vlad ran with that. Like
we actually, I'll tell you a little bit.
Yeah, you can tell me behind the scenes.
So behind the scenes, I liked you. I saw something in you, I'm not sure, but your energy, you were always upbeat, energetic, charismatic, and I like that. And initially when we met you at La Pella, I remember that we didn't have really a plan. And in my mind, we were thinking maybe we can figure something out with stocks, because stock market was always interesting for me. I was always drawn to stock market, and I knew that you can make a lot of money there.
Yeah.
And with your experience, I had ideas of potentially creating like a company around stocks, and eventually, and because we were so good at tech, we wanted to potentially build something in stock market, like a technology in stock market. But for that, you need to know the market. You need to know ins and outs. So, but Vitaly had a different idea. He was like, no, not stocks. And we just wanted you to join. We didn't really have a plan. Same thing with me. When I joined Trend, back then it wasn't Trend, but when we joined the company, we didn't really have a plan for me. I didn't have a title either.
Not at all?
Not at all.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I came in more of a like affiliate manager / just join the team and full figure it out. Vitaly gave me a few tasks, few tests before joining, and I think he was happy with the results.
Yeah.
And he's like, I like this guy, 4K a month, no problem.
That sounds like it.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out. Just join, and that's what I started doing, First 3 months, I'm just learning the business. I was exactly, you're telling the story, and I remember myself being in the same shoes.
How do you say I'm new in Russian? You told me to say
Я зеленый.
Я зеленый. He used to tell me to say. Yeah,
I'm green. I'm green.
Yeah, I remember I'm green.
Because Michael would be probably one of the most annoying people in the company.
I ask a lot of questions. He wouldn't figure it out himself, but that's like curiosity, and also this desire to learn. That's his specialty. That's his feature. Yeah,
and
David, Vitaly told me once on Slack, after I had asked him a question in person, he answered me in Slack and then told me that I was disruptive and just to contact him through Slack because I had so many questions. So I was a squeaky wheel for sure, but I got the grease.
He old the old school way. He would
Yeah.
come up to you and ask a question, and you're trying to focus. You're trying to work. And Michael, what is this? What is that?
Mind you, I grew up, I was basically raised on a trading desk where everyone sat shoulder to shoulder and you're yelling stuff at each other all day. So
Yeah.
that's like how communication.
And we were sitting next to each other and we were slacking each other. Back then it was
opposite.
Skype and other tools.
Yeah. So there was they were trying to get this one company credible on the phone and they couldn't get it for a couple months. And they said, Michael, can you get this guy on the phone? See if you can do it. And I went out and I came back and I said, how's 2:00 today? And so Vlad and I took the call together and they were pretty impressed that it wasn't Vlad and Vitaly trying to get them on the phone, it was other employees, but that I was able to get this account, on the phone and on a business call.
Which is your specialty. That's what you were doing on Wall Street.
Yeah,
you were
I
building
was
the relationships.
networking.
And so you didn't know these guys. How did you outreach to them? How did you get them to agree to a 2:00?
I looked through connections on LinkedIn that I had and then reached out to one of the guys with the other person's name as a reference and asked him if he would jump on a call. And he said yes. Yeah, it's a good bluff. And so at that point, they had an affiliate manager who had left. So there was a void out in a department in the company. And they said, why don't you do that for now? We'll figure out where to put you. And I was able to learn the business from that seat, which is an important seat in my opinion. And then one of the VPs, or the only VP at the time, was this woman, Sarah, and she had worked at one of our vendors. And so she had an Outlook that she had printed out with all her contacts. And I went through it with her and I said, cross out anybody that I can't contact. And she crossed out anybody I couldn't contact. And she said, you can email everyone else on here. So I emailed everybody and I got like 4 replies. But those 4 replies ended up being pretty big customers of Trend Capital. And they're still clients to this day. So I started making my bones that way. And then I went on to a conference in Washington, D.C. with Arkady, our now CEO. And he and I started getting along really well. And he saw the way that I was talking about Trend Capital to potential clients. And I think that sparked something in him that like he's more than just an affiliate manager. So when I got back, he said, I want to make you a director and I want to make this an official department and I want to build the team under you. And so that's what we did. Vlad had stepped down as CEO that year. Arkady was promoted. And Vitaly and Vlad kind of took a hands-off approach to Trend Capital going forward, and Arkady was the one steering the ship, which to their credit, they trusted somebody else with their baby, and we were starting to grow a little bit. And Arkady entrusted me into building the department. And then from there, the last thing that Vlad wanted to do before he left, he said, I want you guys to build auto insurance. And Arkady's like, we need another vertical. Auto insurance, I think, is the one. So they tasked me with figuring out how to build that vertical for our company. And I went down to New York to say thank you to somebody that I had helped me when I was, introduced me to a couple clients in the business. And I took him out to lunch, and he said to me, what are you going to do next? And I said, well, we're going to build an auto insurance vertical. And I give this guy a lot of credit because like technically you could look at us as competitors or whatever. He was just willing to help. And he said to me, that's what I do. He said, let me introduce you to some people. And so we started building the auto insurance vertical. And then from there, the company was growing. We had a venture studio that was starting, that we had some startup projects at Trend. And, fast forward, it's been 6.5 years. I'm now a partner. And these guys have taken care of me. And they took a shot at me when not a lot of people would have. And they have my loyalty because of that. And the company is between the two halves, we have about 200 people. We do a lot more revenue than we used to. And
6 times more? 7 times?
we're going to, absolutely 6 times more.
What do you think the value of the company right now?
I'd say we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 750 to 800. Yeah.
Well, 1,000.
Yeah. Million.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an incredible story. And I mean, many times when you were telling your story, I had goosebumps. because I kind of like took a dive into and tried to imagine everything and all these emotions on all these connections and the family. Wow.
Man,
That's a good one.
thank you so
No,
much for
I
sharing.
appreciate you
your story.
guys listening. You know, I wanted to touch base on one thing that, like, my old partners, I didn't treat them as partners. I treated them as hostages, you know, because they needed me because of the business I was bringing in, but I wasn't helping them at all build the business. You know, I was just bringing in money. And now I have an opportunity to kind of right those wrongs and really help build a culture, a foundation, and expand. You know, we're moving into a new office soon, state of the art, brand new, 33,000 square feet of interior space with another 8,000 exterior. You know, like, I get to be a part of something, and I've learned my lessons the hard way. You know, like, they say, good decisions come from experience, and experience comes from bad decisions, and I exemplify that.
It's a good one.
Now, there's a lot of people who backslide, they spiral downward, but you were able to reverse that. You know, I know personally a lot of people who struggle with substance abuse, and they're not able to rebound. They're not able to claw themselves back up. And it's interesting seeing somebody have such a big fall, but then you bounce back better and harder. Why do you think that is?
There's a couple of reasons. One, I believe because I came from a really good family, and I always knew I was loved. I didn't always know I was worthy of love, but I always knew that I was loved, and that's important. I think that I ended up leaving New York, which was huge, and I also I had my first roommate that I moved out of the sober house with in Portland. We were all sober at the same time, so all the same amount of sobriety. We had just gotten a year. And one day I came home, and we had a rule that nobody was allowed to be in their room by themselves for too long, you know, because we didn't want anybody isolating. And I got home, and one roommate told me the other one light had been on for a couple hours, and he's not coming out. So I said, I was like, let's go to bed and deal with it tomorrow. So the next day I woke up, the light was still on. I go into the room, and he's what I thought was asleep on the floor. And, you know, I go in the shower, and it dawns on me he's dead.
Wow.
And I ran out. I turned on the light. I flipped him over, and he was like hard as a rock, purple. It was a bad scene. And so my life could have gone in two directions. That's a really great excuse to drink and use. But he had died of an overdose, and he had relapsed. So my other roommate disappeared, left to go do drugs, all like haunt the streets of Portland. And I ended up going into keep going to AA. I was working for Rick at the time at the marina, and I went the other direction. And the way I like to tell that story is that 3 guys moved into an apartment, and one of us is still here sober. And the reason why is because I stayed in AA.
So that was my question. Who or what do you credit for this bounce back, for this recovery?
Who or what? As a singular, I think it's a combination. I'd say my family, I'd say God, I would say my sober community, and my sponsor Ryan, Rick, you guys, my wife now, my daughter. So it's been a collective effort.
So since that day, you never touched a drug or alcohol?
No, never.
Okay. And what's giving you strength to stay sober and not even, have you thought of trying?
No, so I used to do drugs, in my opinion. There's a lot of different reasons you can come up with. Yes, to party, obviously, but I believe that I had some hole, some void that I was trying to fill. And I would put drugs in it, alcohol, women, money, whatever, and nothing was filling that void. It was insatiable, that appetite for like something new. So I always wanted to change the way I felt. And now I don't want to change the way I feel. I don't want to cloud these. So, part of recovery and everything is believing that there's a higher power there with you. And I believe that. And I always say to my higher power, is like, I'll keep my eyes clear and you show me signs that I'm doing everything right. And the signs keep coming. And so I have.
So that higher power is God.
Yeah, yeah.
It's your father, the creator of universe, and he created you and he loved you from the beginning. You might not know that.
I don't go
but
too deep into religion.
Eventually, you will realize that he's still there behind the door, and you're the only one who can open the door and come talk to him.
Yes, I have a relationship with my higher power, so I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know how to define it as well as a lot of people, and the way I tell people is because I keep things simple, and for me, I believe that 1, I'm not God, and 2, there is a God, and 3, anything that happens to me is because there's a reason behind it.
Mm-hmm.
There's bad things will come in my life, good things will come as well. Not everything stays good or bad forever, and a lot of the best things that I have in my life are because I went through what I did, and that can't be an accident.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. The story doesn't sound like a coincidence or an accident.
No.
And everything that you've lost, you've recovered 100%. Even your marriage.
My marriage,
which
I'm married.
You didn't really talk about, but
oh yeah, because I don't want to say anything. We just were a bad match. I can talk about my marriage now. So if you want me to get into my personal life, as I'm getting sober, and I think I was about a year and a half, I meet Christina, and I knew right away that there was something different. And it was and I had waited a year and a half to date. I'd waited about a year to date, and I dated a few women before Christina, and they just weren't right. And for the first time in my life, instead of like emotionally detaching and like ghosting somebody, I dealt with it like a man. I went to the person and said, I don't want to be with you anymore. I'm not feeling romantic. This isn't working. And they were really actually understanding. This big fear of like hurting somebody when I was younger, it was just all in my head. So I meet Christina, and it was special from the beginning. And I was the best version of myself. I was extremely poor, which is a great filter, so I knew she was with me for me. And, we fell in love. We got engaged in a year. She's my best friend. And a year later, we had Indiana. And, now I have a mini version of my mom that tortures me, which I think is poetic because I tortured my mom. And now I have this little version that looks exactly like her.
Comes full circle.
She tortures me. Yeah. And I hope she ends up being, like a cross between my wife and my mom, 2 great women,
Wow.
But she's got a little bit of both in them.
What's interesting about your story is there's a lot of people out there that are so dead focused on being an entrepreneur and starting something themselves. And I think that there's a lot of truth that should be spoken to trying to be an entrepreneur, joining an existing company and helping it grow. And I feel like for some people, their skill sets aren't quite aligned with being a founder themselves, building it from scratch. And I would consider myself in that bucket, right? I'm not somebody who is able to get something off the ground, but if I join people who are in that process, that's where I had the most value. And through your story, you started working on Wall Street. And even when you went and started your own thing, it wasn't just by yourself, it was with a few other people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. No, I agree with you. I think that some people are destined to be CEO, founders, entrepreneurs, and some people are destined to be entrepreneurs, which is a term I never heard before, but that's me. I think I'm I'm a Swiss Army knife a little bit. I like to solve problems. I like to work hard, and I love business. So if you have an idea and you're really in a company and you need someone that has a high motor, I'm that person. And I have that obsessive compulsive gene, which is great. I get hooked. And I like to say my demons aren't gone, they're just channeled for good now. But yes, I don't know if I'll ever be a CEO. I'm not sure if I will ever start my own company. And that doesn't bother me at all.
What's the skill set difference between entrepreneur and entrepreneur?
So entrepreneur, you have to be very confident. There's a lot of confidence that goes into that.
But you have confidence.
But not blind confidence.
Okay.
You have to have blind confidence, I believe, to be an entrepreneur. You have to totally believe and
in non-existent.
In non-existent.
You
I
need
believe
to
in myself.
that-
Yeah.
You need to believe that there's nothing in a room, but you can imagine that there's everything in a room.
Exactly.
It doesn't really exist, but you can put something on the table that doesn't exist.
But I will give you something that entrepreneurs, I think it's important that, and something that a characteristic they have that might be better than an entrepreneur has. The only one is that they can take direction. They don't have to be the guy, necessarily get the credit. And I think that you end up getting credit if you do a good job, but I don't mind having a boss. You know, Arcady and I run the business together. You know, we're partners in a sense, but he can fire me. And so he is my boss, and that doesn't bother. And that's not something that it doesn't wear on my ego.
Why do you think that is? Because I think
you
there's
have
a
to be
lot of
humble.
guys. Yeah, but there's a lot of guys who struggle that. So what would you say to those men who are like, no, like it has to be me, but their skill set doesn't align with that? How would you help them bridge that gap?
Ooh, that's a good question. So basically, somebody that wants to be the guy or wants to be the CEO, but is really more geared to be a COO.
Yeah.
I would say that's ego, and my advice to them is to be open to learning, and anything is possible. So attach yourself to a really good CEO and figure out what they have that maybe you don't yet, and see if that's something that you think you can be.
If you have the founder, do you think they need a really strong operator in order to get the business off the ground?
Eventually, some CEOs are great operators. They really are good, but there comes to a point where you can't do it all yourself. So I do believe that the way I think businesses work the best, there's a visionary who has a plan, and then they have someone that is going to go and execute that plan.
Executors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this example really proves that you don't need to be successful. You don't need to start a business from scratch.
Right.
You can join a company. You can join a startup, which I really recommend for anybody up to 25, 30 years old.
I can't recommend that enough. I think that it's a great experience.
Partnerships are hard,
Yeah.
but they teach you how to be in a relationship, build a relationship, stay in relationship, and just grow a relationship. So partnerships are needed for your personal growth as well and the business. The single entrepreneurs, or we call them lone wolf or one-man shop, type of
last.
businesses, they don't really scale. They don't. You can't scale. You'll scale. You'll probably get to $1 million a month, and then that's it.
Yeah,
you
have
need
top.
a team. You need a team. You need partnerships. You need people you trust and delegate. That's the only way to grow. I have a question.
Oh, sure. I wanted to say one thing on that before you go
Okay,
off.
sure.
The most important thing you said there for me is stay together. So like when we were deciding between two vendors that we were going to use at Trend, and this was a big decision because once we decided on one, we weren't going to be able to use any others. And I went and interviewed them all to their offices. And this one company, this guy had been there for 11 years. This guy had been there for 8 years. This guy had been there for 6 years, 7 years. And that was really who our instinct was to work with. And the not having turnover said something, that they took care of their employees. Those people wanted to be there.
They're happy.
They're happy, and they have team chemistry. And that's what we pride ourselves at Trend, is not having turnover. It's having a place that we all,
Exactly.
you can work together, but staying together is key.
Mm-hmm. Going back to your story, analyzing it, what did success mean to you back then when you were 30, and now when you're 40?
That's a great question. Back then, I really wanted people to know I was successful. I wanted to prove, because I felt like I grew up in a town that maybe I didn't belong in necessarily. Mm-hmm. I wanted people
Bronx?
to know. No, I grew up in Westchester.
Oh, Westchester.
The town was Armonk. And the town had grown around me, and a lot of people had a lot of money. And I just wanted people to know that I was successful. So it was, and the more successful you get, there's always going to be someone that has more than you. So then you just want to have more. And
you compete, you show off.
And it wasn't for the love of the business, or it wasn't for anything but my own ego. And now at my 40, what does success mean for me? It means to be able to enjoy my life, to have peace of mind in what I do. You're at work more than you are at home, to enjoy that work. And also, I think that to give myself options in life now. I'm not looking to listen, I'm still going to have a flex here and there, like, you know, a nice watch, a car, but it's not like it was. For me, it's now to have options. Do I want to send my daughter to private school? Can I take vacation to go see my parents? Can I help my parents if they need anything later on in life? You know, things like that.
So success kind of changed the mindset around that, changed for you.
Yes, completely.
What do you think about the phrase, don't conflate things that are hard to get and hard to obtain with things that are valuable?
You mean...
and to give more context, there's
Yeah.
a lot of people who will be like, man, like a Rolex is so valuable, they want it so bad. But then once you get it, if you're really sober-minded about it, it's like, well, I mean, it is just a watch. Is it valuable? I don't know. It's just something that's hard to get.
That's a really good question also. So this is going to tie back to my grandparents and my parents. They taught me a lot of good things about how to work hard, but they never told me or showed me how to celebrate wins and victories in life. And I don't think the watches now are about me showing you what I have or a car what I have, but they're an acknowledgement of a moment in time that is special. That when I look at it or I sit in it, I appreciate how hard it was to get and how expensive it was. And so my grandparents, like I said, they were immigrants. They took one vacation in 50 years, and it was to Las Vegas. And I have the pictures. But they worked 6 out of 7 days.
Wow.
My parents, they are grinders, man.
Back in the days,
Yeah.
this was it.
Yeah.
You were born to work.
My parents are workers, and they take vacations now that later on in life, and they definitely took vacations with us. Sometimes when we were younger, we went skiing, we did things, but taking a moment and saying, I'm going to buy this because it's something that marks a year, a moment in time that says something that good that happened. Because we don't know when good times are going to go away. We don't know how long they're going to last. You have to stop and smell the roses. And you guys have taught me that.
Yeah.
Like the guy, I'm telling you, the Slavic community, they have taught me to acknowledge the wins.
Celebrate your wins.
Celebrate.
I've been always a big proponent of that. I've been always doing it. I've been encouraging my partners, my coworkers to do that.
Us.
Is just you've had a great month. You've had a great win. Let's go celebrate. We deserve it. You know, and luckily we celebrate a lot.
Yeah.
Luckily we do have a lot of
It's been a
parties.
nice
So
run.
thank God.
Thank God is right.
Yeah.
Let's end with two
always-
questions we ask all guests. So
Okay.
first question is, what's a book you'd recommend somebody that's up and coming read that you think would be very impactful? And then number two is, what's something you would have told your younger self that wasn't said to you?
Okay. Book. I'm going to go off script a little bit here. I'm
Sure.
going to say the 4 agreements.
The 4 agreements.
Four
By whom?
agreements. So this is, most people give you books. I think a lot of answers you're going to get are like Traction or Winning by Jack Welch, which is the CEO of General Electric. But the 4 agreements is a book about me. It's about the person, and it's be true to your word. Is the first agreement. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. Third is don't make assumptions. And the fourth is always do your best. And within those chapters, you'll learn what they mean. But business and life is a personal journey. You're around other people. And a lot of people in my opinion, a lot of people that are starting businesses or that are in business are always trying to figure out the secret to business. Oh, if I structure it this way, if I make Excel spreadsheets with diagrams and show everything, like it'll work out. But the first thing you have to understand is yourself. And then from there, I think you can be an asset in whether you start your own business or you join a business. So 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz is what I would read.
Cool.
That's awesome. And the second question, what would you tell an 18-year-old yourself now? With your experience, with what you went through, you pretty much came back from dead.
I would say this. The fastest way to get to who I want to be and to where I want to go is slowly.
Mm-hmm.
No cutting corners.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast,
And sustainable.
and sustainable. I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
In Russian, there's a saying, "Тише едешь, дальше будешь." As the slower you go, the further you're gonna be.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the saying that we
Yeah,
we
you
learn.
gave me
that-
goosebumps on that.
We learn as kids. There's the green light, red light
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
So that game tells you, because like some people that rush, it takes them too long to stop.
Yeah.
But someone that just walks slowly, they can stop themselves within seconds, milliseconds.
Yeah.
So it's a good one. It's a good one. Another question I had is, for example, throughout those years from 25 to 35,
Sure.
that was tough years.
Yeah. I would say the toughest were 30 to 35, but yeah, that's when it caught up to me.
So when you were going through these tough times, were you alone at that moment? I know
that's an
you.
important question. It's an important question. So my life was really big. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of family. And as I was doing more and more drugs, my life got very, very, very small until I was by myself.
And only few people stayed.
Yeah.
So you've hurt a lot of people during
Yeah.
those years.
Yeah, I have.
Did you make an attempt to fix those relationships?
Absolutely. Relationships are the most important thing in my life. So there's a 9th step of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the step is amends. And it ties back to the 4th step. So the 4th step, you write down all your resentments, all the people that I was mad at. And then you write why. And then you write what was your part in that. Mm-hmm. And so all these people that I had resentments with, I was really resenting them basically because they were mad at me. And I realized my part in it. And then I went and apologized in person to every single one for specific things that I did. And some of them healed right on the spot, like my parents. They were awesome about it. Some people took a little time, and they wanted to see that I stayed sober and that I was really
That
changing.
you're genuine. That
Yeah,
this
genuine.
is real.
Yeah, it took a while. It's been now, it's been 8.5 years. So I'll have 9 years on September 11th, God willing.
Wow. Okay, well, Michael, this was awesome.
Thanks,
it
guys.
was pretty short but on point and just amazing one.
Yeah, thank you for being vulnerable. I think there's very few guys who would have the guts to be that vulnerable, and I give you a lot of kudos for that. So thank you.
But I
appreciate it.
imagine how many people will see this as an encouragement, and how many people will realize that, there's a slippery slope that you step on, and quickly, you didn't plan to be a drug addict.
No, in fact, I never thought I would.
You never thought, and you never wanted to be, and
No, it's
planned.
not on my bingo card.
Right. So it's dangerous, it's fast,
Mhm.
and this drug abuse just ruins lives. And just to see you right now in such great shape, by the way, you look great,
Thank you.
and I like your consistency, and you're a big example for me. You wake up so early, you go to the gym every day.
Yep.
All 4 times, right?
4 or 5 times a week.
4 or
yeah.
5 times a week. Even I don't work out as much, but it's a big example. So Michael, I'm glad to be in your life.
Likewise.
I'm glad to impact your life, but just want to say that you're impacting my life as well.
I appreciate that.
And you being in my circle, and I'm being in your circle. Hopefully, we can help each other grow and continue
For many years.
for many, many, many more years. Thank you.
Thanks.
Michael, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Guys, he just knocked out of the park with this one. It was an amazing interview. Got really vulnerable with us. It was a great, great story. Thank you.
Yeah, Michael, your story is super inspiring. We really appreciate you watching this video. We hope you liked it. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment below on your thoughts. Share it with your friends, because we're doing this for the community, and we really hope that it's going to inspire a lot of young people.